First blank, we should have a fractile. They are numbers that partition or divide an ordered data set into equal parts. Okay, and then the next one is quartile. Is approximately dividing an ordered data set into 4 equal parts. Okay, and so this is going to be important, especially when we're creating a box and whisker plot. Okay, so with quartiles, we have a first quartile, or also known as Q1. So this has about a quarter of the data, so at the very beginning. And then we have the second quartile, or Q2. About halfway or 1/2 of the data falls on or below Q2. So Q2 is also the median. And then we do have the third quartile, or Q3, which is about 3/4 of the data fall on or below Q3. So finding quartiles. The number of nuclear power plants in the top 15 nuclear power producing countries are listed. Find the first, second, and third quartile of the data set. Okay, so the first thing we need to make sure is that we reorder this into order from smallest to least. Smallest to greatest. Then we have 10. Looks like we have 11, 15, 17. So 15, 17. I'm going to take off 11. We have 2 18s. We have a 19. We have a 20. We have a 31. We have a 54. We have a 59. And a 104, I believe, are our last numbers. And so when I begin this, I also start with the median. So that's where I first look at the median. So there's 1, 2 on each side, 3 on each side, 4, 5, 6, 6 and 7. So right here, 18 is going to be our median. So that means that 18 is quartile 2. So that is our median. Okay. And so what that did is it split our data in half. Okay. So half of my data is to the left of 18 and half of my data is to the right of 18. And so what I need to focus on now is I am going to focus on just the data to the left for right now of our median, or our Q2, and then I'm going to find the middle number of the ones that I just highlighted. So again, we kind of go from the outside in, and we can see that that is 10. So 10 is the middle number of the first half of the data. So this is going to be quartile 1. And then now I can focus on the top half of my data, here highlighted in this pink. And again, I find the middle term for the top half. And in this case, it's 31. So quartile 3 is 31. So if I can find the median, I should be able to find Q1, Q2, and Q3. Okay. And then we have what we call the interquartile range, or the IQR. The IQR is the difference between Q1 and Q3. So then we have IQR is equal to Q3 minus Q1. And so we'll practice finding that. So from the data above, if we remember, interquartile range, we had Q1 was equal to 10 and Q3 was equal to 31. So we take Q3 minus Q1, and that gives us 21. So the interquartile range, or the IQR, has a value of 21. All right, so finding outliers. So now we will know specifically if a value is going to be an outlier or not. We do that by defining a lower fence and an upper fence. Okay, so the lower fence is the lower limit of data without being an outlier. So we're going to give it some constraints. Okay, and then the upper fence is on the high side. It's the upper limit of data without being an outlier. So if numbers fall in between this range, well, then it's not an outlier. If they fall outside of this range, then we would consider that an outlier now. Okay, so still using the data that we've been using, okay, to find our outliers. Okay, the lower fence. The lower fence is going to be quartile 1 minus 1.5 times the interquartile range. Okay, so that's our formula for the lower fence. It's always that. And so we will have 10, which was our Q1, minus 1.5 times 21, the interquartile range. And when I calculate all this, I get a value of negative 21.5. Okay, so that means if there are any lower numbers lower than negative 21.5, they would be considered an outlier. If we go back and look at all our data, there is not a number less than negative 21.5. So there are no, we'll say no lower outliers. Okay, and then we do the exact same thing for the upper fence, except this time it's Q3 plus 1.5 times the IQR. And so that gives us a value of 31 plus 1.5 times 21. And that gives us 62.5 as our upper limit. So again, we go back and we look at our data. Are there any numbers greater than 62.5? In this case, there is. So 104 is an outlier. Okay, so there's one outlier here, and it has to do with the upper side of our data. All right, and then we're going to use what we call a Boxer and Whisker plot. Okay, it highlights important features of the data set and it requires a 5-number summary. Okay, so that's going to include the minimum value. That's going to include the first quartile, or Q1. That's going to include the median, or Q2. That's going to include the third quartile, or Q3. And it will also include the maximum. Okay, and these should seem familiar. We've been calculating these on our calculator, so as long as you're entering the data incorrectly, into the calculator correctly, then it'll give you your five-number summary. All right, so how do I draw a box and whisker plot? Okay, so first we find the 5-number summary. Then we find the lower and upper fences. Then we construct a horizontal scale that spans the range of our data. And then you plot the 5 numbers above the horizontal scale. Okay, and that's your 5-number summary. Okay, you draw a box above the horizontal scale from Q1 to Q3 and draw a vertical line in the box at the median, or Q2. Okay, and then we draw brackets at the lower and upper fences. And then continued, we draw whiskers or lines from the box to the minimum. Oops. And maximum. And then you plot outliers as dots on the plot. All right, so again, still using the same data. Okay, we're going to construct a box and whisker plot. So again, this is what we had got from the data earlier. The minimum was 6. The Q1 was 10. Q2, or the median, was 18. Q3 was 31. And then we had a max of 104 on our data set. Okay, so I'm going to draw a horizontal axis that will span, right, from our lowest, so that's 6, so we'll say 5, and we'll go up by 10s each time, 15, 25, 35, 45, 55, 65, 75, 85, 95, 105. Okay, and if you need to, we can go ahead and add in those scales. So again, I started at 5 and just went up by 10s. Oops, that should say 95. And then so what I do is I plot a point at my minimum, which is about 6. So that's somewhere there. The First quartile is at 10, which is somewhere about there. Okay. And then the median is at 18, somewhere around there. 31, somewhere around here. And then the thing I forgot is the lower fence. Oops, sorry. The lower fence was negative 21.5. The upper fence, oops, that's UF, was 62.5. And so that's where our whisker is going to go. So 62.5, somewhere right there. So our box is Q1 all the way to Q3. And then we draw just a line there for the median. Okay, so if I label, this is Q1, Q3, Q2, and then this is your minimum, right? And you draw your whisker. So I connect this dot, right, with a bracket and a line there. And then this was our upper fence. And so I'm going to treat that as my high value. And then I also got to plot my maximum, which is just out here. And that was my max, which in this case we determined earlier there was an outlier. Okay, so notice right here on the left side, we're not going to take this box and whisker plot to negative 21.5 unless we were to have an outlier. So since the lowest value is 6, then we just take our whisker to 6. Now on this side, our maximum was 104, but when we identified 104 as an outlier, well, then we're just going to draw our whisker to our upper fence. Okay, so if this was not an outlier, well, then our whisker would go all the way to our max. But in this case, it is an outlier. All right, so let's try one more. If you want to, you can pause the video and kind of do this on your own and then come back and check. I've kind of already done this ahead of time, so I might go a little bit faster. So we have 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8, 10. So I just rearranged those. Okay, this time my median is between these two numbers. This is Q2. Okay, so I have to take the average of 4 plus 5 divided by 2, which is 4.5. So my medium, or Q2, is 4.5. And then I go ahead and find the first quartile, which is 2. The third quartile, which is 7. Okay, my minimum is 1. My maximum is 10. Okay, so I first find the 5-number summary. Then I look for my lower fence, which is going to be 2 minus 1.5 times the interquartile range of 5. Okay, remember I got 5 from 7 minus 2. That's the interquartile range. Right, so if you remember the formula, it's Q1 minus 1.5 times IQR. Okay, and so that gave us negative 6.5. So are there any numbers less than negative 6.5? The answer is no. So these are no lower outliers. And then the formula for the upper fence is Q3 plus 1.5 times the IQR. So that gives us 7 plus 1.5 times 5 again. And that is 14.5. Here we look at our tall value. We don't have any numbers greater than 14.5, so there are no no upper outliers as well. And so then now we just draw our box and whisker plot. Horizontal axis. I think I just went up by ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, and then I just plot those values that I had. I had a minimum at 1. I had a maximum at 10. Q1 was at 2. Q2 was 4.5. And Q3 was 7. Okay, so again, this is the min, Q1, Q2, Q3, and the max, 5-number summary. And so when I draw this, my box spans from Q1 to Q1 to Q3. I draw a vertical line at Q2. I draw my whisker from my minimum to the box. I can use a bracket right there. Same thing on the other side. There's my box and whisker plot.